Hello, everyone, and welcome to McGill Cares, a weekly webcast series addressing a wide variety of topics to support family and informal caregivers. I'm Claire Webster, a former caregiver who became a certified Alzheimer care consultant and founder of the McGill University Dementia Education Program. I work with a dynamic team of leading healthcare professionals to oversee this program, which include Dr. José Moret from the Division of Geriatric Medicine, Dr. Serge Gauthier, McGill University Research Center for Studies in Aging, and Dr. Gerald Fried, McGill Steinberg Center for Simulation and Interactive Learning. These webcasts are made possible thanks to the generosity of our donors, and today's webcast is made possible thanks to the Zeller Family Foundation. Today, we will be discussing a very important topic, resilience, finding courage in the face of hardship. My guest is Susan Wener, a TEDx alum, best-selling author, educator, and therapist. At the age of 36, she was diagnosed with colon cancer. She began treatment with one goal, to see her children finish high school. She successfully underwent chemotherapy and dedicated her career to helping Montreal's cancer community. She pursued studies in natural health, recognizing the importance of holistic treatment methods. On the cusp of graduating as a natural health consultant, she was diagnosed with lung cancer. The prognosis was grim and required life-altering surgery to remove her right lung. Susan shocked her doctors by recovering over 90% of her normal lung capacity. Mrs. Wener is the first and only natural health consultant invited to sit on the Jewish General Hospital's Gynecological Oncology Tumor Board. She's also trustee of the Jewish General Hospital Foundation Board. Ms. Wener will share her amazing story and offer her insights about facing difficult times with hope and resilience. Susan, thank you so much for being with us today.
What a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So I guess to begin, one of the first questions is that what made you decide to just share your journey and just like every intimate and personal detail of it? Like, why did you decide to do that?
You know, I think it first started off actually with my middle daughter, Catherine's suggestion. She said to me, Mommy, you've got so much to say and so much to offer. It has to go to a wider audience than the one that you're presently limited to, which were my clients and some speeches and events that I would be sharing. And so I sat down and I decided to write a book that was honest actually to a fault. There were certain things that I wasn't sure I should put in that were extremely raw and personal. But I decided that if I was going to be truthful with the hope of having other people know that there was hope and possibility in the face of illness and adversity, that there was a chance to live an extraordinary life, even though we faced really tremendous challenges, then I had to be as honest as I possibly could and let people know that I'm just like them and that we could walk together through this journey and that you don't have to do it alone.
I have to say, I have the absolute highest regard for you. And, when individuals like yourself decide to show their vulnerability for the benefit of others, I find that there's nothing more important, and you're a true inspiration. And, the book that you refer to, Resilience, I think I read that book in 24 hours. So it's really amazing. So let's begin the interview. The first question I have is really, how does a near-death experience change you as a person? Like, how do you become much more diligent with your health, commitments, and people that you decide to welcome or not into your life?
That's a bit of a complicated question, and I have a very simple answer for it. When I was 18 years old, I had a near-death experience. I was written up as a really bad case in Montreal of mono, which should never have gotten as out of hand as it did. And I wasn't able to eat, drink, or swallow. I had secondary infections in my nose, my ears, and my throat. And my weight plummeted to 76 pounds. Now I'm 5'5", and that is not a very good weight for somebody of that size. And yet I just felt somehow that I was disappearing. And just before I went into hospital, I had this aha moment that happened where all of a sudden nothing hurt anymore. It was as though I had somehow left my body and was looking at everything from the ceiling, almost as though I was looking down at this young woman lying in her mother's great big bed. And I wasn't able to communicate. I saw my mother crying, and yet I wasn't able to tell her that I was really fine. I was peaceful. I was fine. I never saw that notorious white light or talked to God. I just felt like my consciousness had somehow spread over the ceiling. And I knew then and there that there was far more out there than I would ever be able to intellectually rationalize or understand. But it made me decide that one day I would work with people who were very ill, because dying just didn't seem so scary anymore. So
And
I don't know as a human towards allowing people in or out of my life. What it did was it opened the doors to extraordinary possibility and potential, and I never let those doors close.
Just an amazing perspective. So can you please share with us how you navigated not one, but two experiences with cancer?
I was a person who was always very, very strong. I was extremely physical as a young adult. I did everything that I could, and I faced some difficult physical challenges in my late 20s and early 30s. I had to stop dancing ballet at 27 because my knees gave, and I just, by the time I was 35 years old, I had had my knees reconstructed, my lower spine fused, 3 laparoscopic surgeries, and a hysterectomy. And to some people, they would say, oh my God, she's a superwoman, and look at what she's gone through. She's 35 years old, she has 3 children, and she's managed all of these things. But in my mind, they were just structural things that were able to be fixed. And I was really, really good with my mind. I was disciplined. As a dancer, you have to be disciplined. And I was really good at somehow changing the stories that went on in my brain. And I had started volunteering in palliative care when I was 28 years old. I had worked there for 8 years before I became sick at the age of 36. And so I was very used to that population. I loved them. I thought that they were extraordinary humans who had no window dressings on. They were honest and they were vulnerable, and I was able to relate to them with grace and with ease. And then at 36, when I discovered that I had colon cancer, all my education and all my learnings just flew out the window in a heartbeat. You hear it being said that you lose it in a second. And for me, it was absolutely true. And it was shocking, because I guess I thought I was better than that. I had had all these experiences. I never, felt why me. I kind of thought, why not me? Because I'm no better than anybody else. But I lost my sense of self. I became quiet. I became vulnerable. I became fearful. I became teary-eyed. I was worried. And I didn't know how to put one foot in front of the other. I think that I was really lucky that I believed so absolutely in my doctors, because whatever they said, I did. I claimed no sense of personal responsibility. I let them take me by the hand and lead me on the path that they felt was the best path for me. And I went along willingly and without question. So I had a bowel resection, and then I had chemotherapy afterwards. And I think if they would have told me to jump off a bridge, I would have jumped off the bridge, because all I wanted was to never be sick again. That was my thought. And after the surgery for the colon cancer, my doctor told me that I had a 95% chance of disease-free living, and I should go home and be happy. And there was something inside of me that couldn't be happy. It wasn't that I wasn't appreciative, and it wasn't that I didn't have excellent care from my medical team. I really did. I had the best of care. I had conscious doctors who were really, really kind. But I realized I needed far more than just traditional medical care. I needed my body along with my mind and my psychology and my emotions and my psyche and my spirituality. I needed all of those things to be addressed. And I realized that in order for me to be healthy and well, I had to look at whole person care, because I was not just a body part. I had to think about, how did this happen in the first place? How did I set up an internal environment into which this illness had a chance to even evolve or come? And if I couldn't find any answers to any of those questions, would I simply be a victim to the circumstance I was facing and perhaps be playing a wait and see game to see if it ever happened again? And that wasn't my character. I was not a wait and see kind of person. And so I needed to desperately take matters in hand. And the first thing that I did, which was what helped ground me and give me a foundation to getting better and creating a personal program for myself, was create a construct of God. I had never grown up in a religious family. My father was atheistic, saying, my mother lost half her family in the Holocaust. If that were possible, how could there be a God? But we were traditionalists. We loved holidays that brought family together. We liked being together. So we were more community-centered rather than God-centered. But I needed something that I could count on and that nobody could take away from me, because the concept of God is really an intangible subject. Nobody can absolutely prove or disprove anything about it. So I remember coming out of the hospital, and as it would be, it was the Jewish high holidays. And I said to John, my husband, I want to go to synagogue. And he said, oh God, really? And I went, yeah, I want to go to synagogue. And he said, okay. And he kind of guarded me with my girls in synagogue. And I sat there, and the rabbi read, God shall decide who shall be well and who shall be sick, who shall live and who shall die, and that part of the ceremony. And I thought I screamed out loud, not my God. And it was the voice inside my head. And I thought, okay, what is it that I really need? And I need a God. I figured that I needed a God who would wrap me in his arms and rock me and hold me the way I held my babies when they were young, the way my father held me as a loving parent. I needed a God who would hold my hand and never, ever let me go, the way I felt as a young child, putting my hand in my dad's big paw and feeling safe as I could look up into his eyes. I needed a God that would look at me with twinkling eyes that would say there's hope and endless possibility and you can't get it wrong. And I'm always there for you, to walk beside you, to tend to you, and to be with you. It's not about a God that was going to fix me or make me better. It was about a God who would simply walk beside me and help me through this journey. And that concept became so strong for me that it's as powerful, and the belief is so real, as though the sun is going to rise tomorrow. And it's my construct, it's my belief system, and nobody can take it away from me. And what it's done is it's helped me through the darkest of times, because illness by itself is very lonely. And in the dark of nights, you can have a million people around you who love you, but in the dark of darks, you are by yourself. And if you could find a way to self-soothe, which was for me creating that concept, then I was able to do that. And then from that, as a basic foundation, I started building for myself what I needed. What I needed next was a sense of purpose. Why was I going to go through this? And Nietzsche had a great line. He said, he who can find a why can bear almost any how. And if I could find a why, then I could get through whatever difficulties the journeys might face. And the why was my daughters. They were 8, 12, and 13 at the time, and they had not had enough of me. It would be very romantic to say I chose to live for my husband, but it wouldn't be true. John was an adult, and I had to trust and believe that he had what it took to be able to make it through life with or without me. But my girls didn't have enough of me, and they became really my reason to move forward. But again, that wasn't enough. I had to think about, what do we do to ourselves? Like, we put food in our bodies, we put thoughts in our minds, and we exercise. And if I had, what they ultimately call the ultimate failure of the body's immune system, I needed to work hard on all three areas because something just wasn't right within me. And
So Susan,
I started because
so one of my questions is, because I want to get into how that whole process, but so what was the time lapse between your first diagnosis with the first bout of cancer and the second? Then all of a sudden you've done all this work and now you get another diagnosis of a different type of cancer.
It was 4.5 years. Just on that special time where you think, oh, maybe that you're going to be safe. And I mean, I went through a lot. I didn't just sit still. I went back to school. I did 2 years of visualization and imagery. I did a 3-year course in natural health. I mean, I tried to find what is everything that's going on in the world that can help me sort of mind, body, spirit, soul. How can I become the best I can be to be able to see what's out there? What are the other healing modalities that are out there that might be able to help and guide me through this journey?
Was it a bit of a, I mean, so 4.5 years between the two diagnoses. So after the first diagnosis, you mentioned that the doctor had said, you have a 95% chance of full recovery. Did you have a premonition though, like in year 4, that something was off again? How did you know that you weren't well again?
Well, it's interesting because I didn't feel physically sick, but I felt restless. I felt that there was something that was going on that was missing that I couldn't get my finger on. And it's very interesting. I went to the movies with my mom, my late mom, and it was a movie called The Doctor with William Hurt. And William Hurt was a doctor who was a very sort of distant doctor. He was separate from his patients, his oncology patients. And then he developed cancer. And the story was about how he crossed those lines and became much more human and able to communicate with his patients. During that movie, I coughed a lot, but the cough was a dry cough that really didn't mean anything to me. And my mother throughout the whole movie kept knocking me and saying, Susie, you better go get that checked. And I'd say, it's just this allergic cough that I get every spring. It was spring. And I did. I got an allergic little cough, every spring when different things were started to grow. And it would be always a, but the whole movie, she didn't let up. And then afterwards, she didn't let up. And I thought, okay, you know what? Eventually I made an appointment and I said, it's time for my chest x-ray anyway. And I'll make an appointment and we'll see what happens. But that appointment never came because I had before that my first bowel obstruction from all the previous surgeries that I had in my abdomen. And I was taken by ambulance to the hospital. And when the doctor came in to be able to tell me what he saw, when he inserted the tube in my nose and things like that, he looked at me and said, you have far greater things to worry about than a bowel obstruction. He saw 3 tumors in my right lung. And I thought I would die on the spot. I was so angry with him. I said, how the hell, and I didn't use such nice language, do you know for sure that this is cancer? It could be a fungus. It could be this. It could be that. I could have tuberculosis. What did I know? I was desperate. And I said, how could you be sure without a biopsy? And I was so angry. And I said, and as soon as I'm better from this bowel obstruction, I'm leaving your hospital. I'm going back to my hospital because I had a procedure, a gynecological procedure at that hospital a couple of weeks earlier, which resulted in this bowel obstruction. And it was at a different hospital than the one that I would normally go to. And ultimately, he happened to be right. It was through years of experience, and he knew. I had to spend 10 days in that hospital alone, waiting for this bowel obstruction to clear before anything else could be done. And that gave me a lot of time to think.
So were there any moments, because, when you're talking, you are the pillar of resilience, but were there any moments that you just felt like giving up and just said, I just can't do this anymore?
When I had the lung removed, it was probably the most difficult physical experience that I ever went through. I mean, I remember waking up with a ventilator breathing me, and I panicked so badly because I couldn't fathom that experience. And I have to tell you, I feel so sad for those people who have COVID, who are on ventilators for long periods of time, because they had to put me out immediately. And when I woke up again, it was removed. It was a terrifying experience. But I was told, because I was an athlete, that I would have no trouble having a right lung removed, which is 55% of the breathing capacity in the lungs. The left lung is 45% because it makes room for the heart. And I had so much trouble. I felt as though overnight I turned into a 90-year-old woman. I couldn't walk a step without having to sit down. I couldn't walk a stair without having to sit down. And I had to be watched for 3 months at home. I wasn't allowed to be alone. And I'm a very solitary person. I do not like anyone hovering after me. It just doesn't work. So, John took me to the country and he sort of took me away, and he worked outside. So basically, I really was alone. It was a really hard time. And I remember thinking at that time, I don't know if I could physically do it. I had my father, who I could talk to about anything. He was my best friend. And I remember lying in his arms, and I was wet from his tears. And I said, Daddy, I think the pull of life and the pull of death has equal hold on me. And I don't know that I could do it. I don't know that I want to do it. It's so, so difficult. And he told me that he would support me in whatever I chose. And that gave me a gift of being able to begin to heal and being able to have support that was unconditional, where you could say anything without having somebody wanting to fix you or say, no, fight hard. I want you. I need you. I love you. It was something that was really important to me. And the other time that I really thought about death was when I was really dying from a bowel obstruction along with C. difficile. And trying to imagine that combination. A bowel obstruction does not let anything out. And C. difficile does not allow anything to stay in. And therefore, I had an absolute internal war going on within my system. And I basically was melting away. I was dying. And the funny thing is that it didn't feel sad and it didn't feel heartbreaking. It felt calm and peaceful. I just was melting like an ice cube was disappearing. And I was okay with that.
So Susan, where does your resilience come from? And, you mentioned before being in the synagogue and having to have God beside you, but so there are so many people listening right now that are going through very, very traumatic and challenging times in their life, whether it be through illness or other personal issues. Where does your resilience come from, and how can people tap into their own resilience?
I think it's something that we're born with. I think it's something that's innate within all of us, and circumstances have the tendency to bring it out. I mean, I'm going to tell you honestly, Claire, if I knew what my life held from the beginning, I'm not sure I would have signed up. It was really, really tough. I mean, we had, I had a lot of years from my late 20s until, my early 60s of really struggling, and my late 50s, I should say. And it was tough. But I think that each time we take a step, we have to understand that the moments of anguish, the moments of discomfort, the moments of pain, all have a time frame. They last just for a period, and then they dissipate. And when our bodies have so much to handle that they absolutely cannot handle anymore, we often go unconscious, we go to sleep, we die. And sometimes that's okay too. What I learned through these experiences were ways of how to leave my body so that I could somehow be separated from some of the pain, from some of the issues that I was dealing with, and place my mind in a different place. It was almost like disconnecting from my body. And I learned how to do that through visualization and imagery. You know, when I was a little girl, my father and I used to cut out places of everywhere we'd like to go in the world. We were too poor to ever go anywhere. We'd put those places in an envelope, take them out, and have great discussions and look in the encyclopedias about what we would find when we were there. And I learned how to use my mind, how to use my imagination, and create a tool that was something that would carry me through some really, really trying times. So I would sometimes just imagine myself in Hawaii, if I wanted to be in Hawaii, or on the top of a mountain. I would imagine myself being able to swim in a cool pond of water and feel healthy and well, or walking along a quiet beach. And I would use my mind to disassociate myself from some of the pain. I had to learn how to breathe. I had to learn how to take time to meditate. I had to learn how to reframe thoughts so that I would find thoughts that would serve me better than the thoughts that would be catastrophizing and allow me to go down. But I think resilience is a little bit like a muscle. And the more we experience it, the more we use it, the stronger it gets. And every time we fall down and we get up, it's a way of activating that resilience mechanism. You know, people never look at little babies who are learning to walk and say, "You poor thing, you keep dropping off and you keep falling on your bum." But there's something innate in each of us that just gets up each and every time. It's like this will to live where there's no other option except to live. And resilience, I believe, is developed through that. And the more experiences we have, and as time passes, it becomes greater and greater and stronger and stronger. And all of us have the capacity to develop that.
Susan, because this webcast is really also a way to support family caregivers. And what would you say to family members that are right now caring for someone who was in your position who has cancer? I mean, first of all, how did your cancer impact Jonathan and your daughters? And what could family members do to best support a loved one going through the same journey?
I think the impact was different with both cancers. I think at first everybody was in shock. John is a fixer and he couldn't fix this and he didn't know where to throw himself. I mean, and that was a really hard thing. And I think he went down the rabbit hole because he thought I was going to die. At the same time, one of his friends had a wife who was dying. And when I was diagnosed, and they commiserated in the hospital. My youngest daughter said to me, "Mommy, you're always sick. You've always been in the hospital. You've always gotten better. Why should this time be different?" So she was very nonplussed about the whole thing. And my middle daughter, however, said, "If you die, I'll die. I can't live without you." And I remember the first time we ever left the house, I came back to an ambulance, that she'd had such a massive asthma and panic attack that, we had to call whoever was there. My housekeeper had to call 911. And my eldest daughter decided to take charge. She decided that she was going to fix the family and that I didn't have to do anything and everything would be fine. So they were definitely impacted dramatically. The second time around, my husband was absolutely sure I was going to die because a second cancer is like one step closer to the grave. And then he became softer. He became that person who had to start to go and find solace and peace with friends, because I couldn't be that person to fix him or take care of him. I had enough to do with just trying to help the girls. He kind of was on his own, but he did. It forced him to become much more independent from me. That was an important thing. And the girls became very independent. They had to learn. It was my job, especially with my middle daughter, to separate myself from them and make them strong and promise them that if anything happened, I would always be honest and tell them the truth. And You know, it's interesting because I had a conversation just recently with my eldest, who's 45, and she said to me, you know, Mummy, if you were to ask me what my greatest learning would be from you, I would tell you it was passive learning. It had nothing to do with what you said. It had to do with watching what you did and how you kept getting up and how you found a way to separate yourself when you needed to have quiet and peace and become selfish and to take care of yourself and to, you know, nurture you. So we have all learned that we don't have to get sick in order to take care of ourselves and to be well. And I think that that's a huge lesson for family members. You do not need to get sick in order to be well. And you have to separate yourself from the people with whom you take care of and the people with whom you work. It is not your journey. You're affected by it, but it is not your story. And if you choose to make it your story, then you're going to develop all of the issues as if it were. And it's not easy to do. It's much harder to do. But you have to learn that selfish means taking care of self. And that means making sure that you sleep properly and eat properly, get the rest you can, go out and ask for the help that you need, ask for the support that you need from the community around you. And today, we're pretty lucky with the CLSCs and some of the caregivers, but not to become that person who lives, breathes, and drinks in the woes and the pains of another, because if you do that, you will succumb to those pains and woes.
Susan, I only have time for one more question. So I'd like to talk to you about the importance of education. So in your book and interviews that I've seen, you talk about education, educating oneself on the disease, treatment options, etc. And I'm a huge advocate for education. It's everything that I believe in. Can you please expand on the importance of learning and understanding about any situation that one faces?
For me, knowledge is power. And rather than feeling like a victim to the circumstance I was in, I tried to explore all the different avenues around my healthcare. And I felt that the more I was learning, the more opportunities I gave myself to be truly healthy and well and vibrant as a human. I think that some people like to bury their head in the sand and to say, I've had cancer, I never want to look at the idea of cancer again, and I'm going on with my life. And I'm not that person to say that's wrong. I think if that's what works for you, then that's fine. But it wasn't what worked for me. In order to feel that I had a role and that I had a purpose and that I had a responsibility and a partnership in this journey, I had to educate myself so that I would know how to talk to my doctors, what questions to ask for my doctors, where to go when traditional medicine didn't offer me answers, how to be able to move through the world of complementary medicine, traditional medicine, how to be able to navigate some of the ancient medicines like Ayurvedic medicine and Chinese medicine and try to get the absolute best out of everything so that I could have the best possible outcome. But before we end, I just have one thing that I really want to say that's, to me, so important. All the doctors, all the practitioners, all the healthcare providers around us are not going to make us well. All they're going to do is offer the best skills, knowledge, and tools that they have. It is up to us, each one of us, to create the best internal environment into which those medicines, skills, and tools have an opportunity to work well. And that means that in my perspective, if you want to be well, then you've got to do some of the work as well.
Oh, such incredible advice, and I can totally relate due to my own journey. Susan, thank you so much for being with us. And first of all, Resilience, your book, how can people get hold of that incredible book?
You can get it really online as an ebook or on Amazon. Sometimes you look online and they have a few books that, have been left in the bookstores, but we took over the publishing, so it's basically ebooks.
It's just one of the most amazing books that I've read and true inspiration. And you're an incredible inspiration to so many people. And I'm so grateful that you've taken the time to be on our show today. Thank you so much.
What a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So if everybody would like to please join us on Wednesday, November 18th Our show will be about the latest research on Alzheimer's disease. Our guest will be Dr. Serge Gauthier, Director of the Alzheimer's Disease and Related Disorders Research Unit at McGill University Research Center for Studies in Aging. Dr. Gauthier will provide an update on the latest and most promising research on the detection and treatment of Alzheimer's disease. This webcast is an initiative of the McGill Dementia Education Program, which is funded by private donations. Once again, I would like to thank the Zeller Family Foundation for supporting today's webcast. To make a contribution to our program or for more information, please visit us at www.mcgill.ca/dementia. And if you have specific topics or questions that you would like to address, please email us at dementia@mcgill.ca. Until next week, please take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Thank you for watching.